The mechanism inside a wristwatch which measures time and moves the hands accordingly is called the movement. High-end watches typically use traditional, very intricate mechanical movements. Such premium watches are made up of a multitude of components, requiring hundreds of manufacturing and assembly operations. Luxury wristwatches are made of top-quality materials, often precious metals. They're crafted with painstaking precision, partly by traditional watchmakers, partly by high-tech machines. The main section of the watch case starts out as a block of metal, stainless steel for this model. A press stamps the preliminary shape, which a computer-guided milling machine then finalizes. Another computer-guided machine drills a hole on the side for the stem and crown, the manual watch-winding mechanism. This tool refines the edges. Next, using an abrasive tool, they manually etch the surface to give it a brushed metal finish. They apply some polishing compound to a felt buffing wheel and polish the entire surface. Certain models undergo a second polishing, performed by a robot. The two other parts of the watch case, the back and the ring around the watch face called the bezel, are made the same way as this main section. To produce the movement, they cut a square brass plate and stamp it into a preliminary shape. This computer-guided mill then refines it to the correct thickness. The next computer-guided machine makes several slots and holes. This part, called the main plate, is the base upon which all the movement's components will be assembled. The milling process leaves behind traces of metal dust and oil on the surface, so the main plate undergoes a thorough washing with water and solvent. Once dry, a computerized inspection device examines the plate from 3 dimensions, verifying that every last detail is precisely as it should be. Then the last machine cuts the final circular shape. The main plate is now technically perfect. Only finishing steps remain. First, to remove tool marks, they sandblast the surface to give it an even, matte finish. Here's what the plate looks like before sandblasting and after. Another computer-guided tool etches tiny circles onto the main plate surface to produce a pearl-like effect. This next component, called the bridge, covers most of the parts assembled onto the main plate, and itself holds a number of parts. After a laser engraves the company name, they fill the lettering with varnish. They put the bridge into an automated machine, which etches a brushed finish and wipes off the varnish. Some varnish residue remains inside the letters, making them more visible. Next, a robot sets a jewel into each hole in the main plate. Jewels are tiny cup-shaped synthetic rubies. Each jewel will hold one of the movement's moving parts in a drop of lubricating oil. After installing 2 barrels containing a spring each, the watchmaker positions 4 wheels. These form the gear train, which moves the hands of the watch. Next, he mounts the auxiliary main plate on top. This sandwiches the barrels and gear train, holding them in place. Then, the escapement, the regulating mechanism. Winding the watch fully coils the springs inside the barrels. The escapement paces the springs as they slowly unwind and turn the gear train. Now a robot takes over, squirting a drop of oil in each jewel. Meanwhile, a laser engraves the watch brand name and logo into the oscillating weight. This component is a heavy metal disc, first stamped in a press, then refined by high-precision, computer-guided The oscillating weight is an automatic winding mechanism. This weight, located on the back side of the movement, automatically winds the watch as it's on your wrist. Therefore, the more often you wear the watch, the less often you have to wind it manually by turning the crown. The watchmaker connects the oscillating weight to the springs which move the gear train, so that the weight will shift backwards and forwards with any wrist movement, automatically coiling the springs. On the front side of the movement, he screws in the date indicator and the dial. The dial is comprised of two brass plates, the top one coated in oxidized copper, with cutouts to show the bottom one, which is painted with this company's secret formula of glow-in-the-dark pigments. Next, a machine mounts the brass hour and minute hands. This operation is automated because applying even slightly too much pressure could damage the tiny, delicate hands. Now for the watch case. After twisting an arched ring, called the bezel, onto the front of the main case, he slides a plastic gasket into it, then positions the main case onto a press. Cleans the crystal, then presses it forcefully into the bezel. The gasket seals the minute gap between the crystal and the bezel, so that water can't seep inside the case. Next, the stem and crown. Then on the back of the case, the casing circle, a ring that comes between the movement and the case. Here too, a gasket seals the gap to make the case water resistant. He installs the ring and crystal which form the back of the case. He applies grease so that it twists on smoothly. He closes it tightly with a tool. Then the fully assembled case goes off to be tested for water resistance. If it passes, it comes back to the watchmaker to receive the movement. He removes the crown and the case back, cleans the movement, then places it in the case. Next, he squirts grease in the crown hole and reinstalls the crown. This time, because the movement's in place, the crown's stem connects to the two springs, so that turning the crown now winds them. The watchmaker affixes the movement in the case with several tiny clamps and screws. Then he closes up the back for the last time. After checking that the movement works properly, he has just one last component to assemble to the watch head. This particular watch company has developed a unique protective device which goes over the crown. A computer-guided mill shapes it out of the same type of metal as the case, so that aesthetically, it blends seamlessly. The watchmaker screws the device to the case, so that it bridges the crown. The device has a lever, the tension of which the watchmaker carefully adjusts with the help of this gauge. The lever closes the device tightly over the crown, immobilizing the crown so that it can't be turned accidentally. Finally, they mount the watch head on an automated machine which closes the back tightly. This is critical for water resistance. Every single watch head this factory manufactures must pass several quality control tests to ensure timekeeping accuracy and water resistance. For water resistance, they first test using air pressure. Then, actual water tests. First, a low-pressure test in 10 centimeters of water. Then, a high-pressure test in 375 meters of water, which far exceeds the 300-meter depth to which the watch is guaranteed to be water resistant. Finally, it's time to assemble and attach the watch strap, either a link bracelet in matching metal or a strap made of fine leather, a fitting finale to this luxury wristwatch, the elegant product of precision technology and time-honored tradition.